Speaker. It's my pleasure also to make a call, to take a call on this bill. As has been already spoken by others, this is a bill which has, I think, support from all throughout the House, simply because it's good common sense. There's a myriad of regulations, of bylaws, both at the local level and at the national level, which are regulating the sale of food and the distribution of food. I think the key thing, as other speakers have already pointed out, is that when you have an estimated cost of about $80 million that you can attribute to poor handling and to lost work opportunities as a result of this, of bad food handling, it certainly makes this legislation all the more important. And I think one of my colleagues pointed out that if, for example, you did actually get sick as a result of this food handling disorder, some diarrhoea or whatever, and you had to stay at home, of course now there's probably an obligation on you to go to a doctor to get a medical certificate. And let's just touch on that for a moment, Mr. Speaker, because let's face it, if you were sick for, let's say, a day, and then having to get an appointment to see a doctor perhaps the next day, and then having to front up with that to your employer, what a waste of time. Instead of one day off work, Mr. Speaker, you might have 2 or 3 while you go and get that much needed medical certificate. So congratulations to the government for coming up with a suggestion which is actually going to result in more people being off work rather than less. However, coming back to the key issue, Mr. Speaker, which is the need for this bill, the myriad of bylaws, of regulations that exist at the moment, which makes it extremely complicated and confusing for food sellers and operators. And it doesn't, as has been pointed out, is not meant to apply to those charity barbecues, sausage sizzles that you see. Although I guess over time, and particularly as a result of this bill and the additional education that will be related with bringing it into its implementation, we will also see hopefully some improvement in that area. This bill was begun, as has been pointed out, by Labor, under the Labor government, again as a result of the need. And the way the existing legislation has grown holus spolis. We are supportive of it. We will obviously take it to the Select Committee. There's an enormous amount of work to be done on a tomb, a doorstopper like we've seen, and we'll be going through those in the Select Committee. There's a couple of areas of possible, I think, concern, and I'd like to highlight those areas right now. That is the amalgamation of the Food and Safety Authority, the New Zealand Food and Safety Authority, with MAF. This is important because I think under the guise of efficiency, cost saving, we have a government which is putting together agencies which really will, I believe, undermine the operation and probably the Food Safety Authority, particularly being under MAF. What we have seen in this amalgamation is actually no real cost savings whatsoever, 0 cost savings. And yet we have a smaller organisation amalgamated with a much larger organisation, and its key purpose and its key reason for being possibly threatened and undermined, and I think that's an extremely important aspect of this move. It echoes and it is also found in the science and innovation area, and I applaud the government for their changes. Their amalgamation of FORCE, the foundation, with the Ministry of Science and Technology, in a new very good sounding ministry, the Ministry of Science and Innovation, great sounding, but again does not really highlight enough what may happen as a result of this amalgamation. And let's see what might happen. We're looking at about $6.9 million to put these two agencies together, Mr. Speaker. $6.9 million. it will take at least 5 years or 6 years, looking at Treasury's estimates, before that becomes cost neutral in terms of the savings. So you ask yourself, why are we doing this? And the only answer I can come up with is, it makes the government look like it's doing something for the sake of doing something. It's a great name, but it's a very big price tag, $6.9 million, to change the name of an organisation. But more importantly, what it does is it mixes the funding with the policy. Now policy and funding will be in the same agency. The great point about the ministry, and Labor looked at this ourselves, the great point about the ministry was that it was able to give independent policy advice to the minister, separate from its ability to fund different pieces of research. It now makes the minister susceptible to the fact that that funding is going to be mixed up with that policy advice, that funding could actually be directed by the minister, which is not the intent of the legislation at all. Coming to another point on that, Mr. Speaker, the new head of the Ministry of Science and Innovation, I think, gave a great opportunity to get some of the best thinkers, the best innovators internationally to head this new organisation. This is an organisation that can lead our innovation, can lead our economic drivers into the future. What have we seen? What we've seen, Mr. Speaker, is a 2.5 week recruitment process to try and find a head for this new organisation. 2.5 weeks. That does not enable a comprehensive international search to occur throughout the world. We want this new agency to drive our economic growth, to get behind some of the science and innovation, to get behind some of the commercialisation of the fantastic ideas that are out there in New Zealand. And what we're seeing is a very half-hearted, nudge-nudge, wink-wink type of recruitment policy to get the person who is going to be responsible for driving that. We could get somebody from Finland or Denmark, Singapore, Israel, the countries in the world that are really out there at the head of our innovation. Instead, what we're going to be getting, I believe, is a person after 2.5 weeks of search that will come from probably within our own organisation, within the bureaucracy already, with, I hope, great credentials, but more likely to be with the same thinking and very little new thinking, and therefore very little in the way of new opportunities for New Zealand to get ahead. Mr. Speaker, I believe that's a very sad, indictment on the way that this government is going about its reorganisation. It's a very sad indictment of the way that we are trying to get ahead in our economic growth. We had an opportunity to be able to recruit a really world-class person, a really world-class leader in heading up our export, scientific, innovation-led type of industries. And instead what we're going to get, Mr. Speaker, is somebody that is going to get a wink and a nudge and a tap on the shoulder from within the bureaucracy. I think that's a wasted opportunity. Now, if we did a proper recruitment process, and if that person was recruited on the basis, and a local person was recruited on the basis of a wide international search, throughout the world, and if we got a New Zealander who was already here working within our institutions, and that person was selected from an international search, I would say that was a good piece of, that would be in a sense a great pat on the back for that person who was recruited. But we're not getting that. We're not getting that. Instead, we're getting somebody who is going to be, after a 2.5 week desultory, narrow recruitment process, we're going to get somebody who is probably is not necessarily going to be the best, or we would certainly not know if that person is going to be the best. It's a bit of a shame, Mr. Speaker. Coming back to the